Hey, welcome to another edition of Unfiltered with Mike DeZonia here on WILI 1400 AM, 95.3 FM. In studio today.
Guess who's here?
Guess who's here again?
Making an appearance on Unfiltered with Mike DeZonia. Chris Reddy from right now, Thursdays, 3 to 4 p.m. WILI 95.3 FM. Thanks, Mike, for having me on this afternoon. I'm glad that I could join you in studio again for another episode of Unfiltered.
Always a pleasure, especially when I lose my mind and forget where I am. So we had a pretty good-sized snowfall here.
Yeah, Curtis and I talked about that the other day. I know you have been busy throughout this storm. Clearly, we are still all recovering from this, but it looks like we had a little bit of a thaw this afternoon, a little bit of improvement in our conditions here. But unfortunately, Groundhog Day, and guess what?
Yeah, it's another...
You saw a shadow.
Yeah, another 6 weeks.
6 weeks. Are you kidding me?
So...
What do we have on planned for today on Unfiltered, Mike? What type of stuff are we going to be talking about? I have a little bit of a preview of something that I'm going to be discussing on Thursday. What do you have for our listeners on Unfiltered?
We've got a lot of talk about the school plans and some social media corrections. There's been a lot of talk about the air conditioning units and the air handlers at the high school going down. And come to find out, a lot of it is warranty stuff.
That's good.
That they're doing, which is really good for the taxpayer.
Absolutely.
The Barrows, them units are, prematurely failing, and but they're separate. And a lot of people are confusing the two together. So okay. I think that's getting people all riled up more than they should on certain things. Mm-hmm. But again, they're still pushing forward with this march for a new school and newer buildings, and I just don't getting out and talking to a lot of people, and myself included, I just don't see that right now as being feasible with the current economic structure of the town, where we it's just not the time.
You've brought up some good points in the past about how there is a population in Willimantic that really is dependent on the ability to have a school that is very local, mm-hmm. where they have the ability to walk to not only for their children to get to school, but also for activities that involve parents and family members. That this is something that's important to the Willimantic community, that they maintain a school that is within the district and provides that opportunity. Is that something that we've discussed a number of times in the past?
It is, and it's probably one of the most important things, I think, because when you have engagement from the family, you generally have, in my opinion, you have a better performing student. And these kids, when they don't have, they look out at a function and they don't see a parent or a mm-hmm. grandparent or somebody there. It's hard on them, and the same with the parents want to be there. And unfortunately, because of the economy and mm-hmm. everything, there are some people that just can't afford their own transportation. They mm-hmm. can't afford to get to the schools, whereas your local schools, they have the ability to walk. Mm-hmm. And get there and watch their kids and take part of all these things that happen. We've got the Invention Convention. Mm-hmm. You've got all this stuff that happens at these schools. And there's another show on during the week that brings kids on all the time for, they sing on the show and everything. Yeah. And, really sit back and think about that. These kids, they want their parents there to hear them, these performances and everything. And if we take them out, what are we doing to these kids? We're taking them and putting them out in a school where they don't have that family audience, mm-hmm. or only the kids that are able to afford to do it.
Has there been any look at the transportation costs that will be added on to consolidating a school system like this? Because clearly, if you have now an entire district that's relied on being able to walk to school as part of their school population budget. When you look at the expense that schools have, especially when it comes to special education transportation in these school districts, has anybody looked at the financial impact that's going to come about from a consolidation of the school districts in Wyndham?
Well, I've asked that question, and I don't think by the answer that I got, I don't think they've looked into it. They really haven't even looked into the maintenance and, upkeep of the new buildings. But one thing that was said, the chairman of the Board of Ed had said that they were going to buy vans and transport these families with minivans and things like this, which when you really look at that, that's not going to happen. I mean, we can't even afford what we've got now, and we're going to buy minivans and transport families.
Who would be the owners of these minivans? Would it be the Board of Education or the town of Wyndham? Is this...
I think it's so far-fetched that I don't know. I think it was just something that somebody shot off at the hip to answer a question in front of a bunch of people, and there really is no answer to that.
Okay.
I know, there was backlash over the Board of Ed buying a pickup truck, so I can't imagine getting the okay to buy a bunch of minivans,
12-person vans or whatever.
And then also the staff to drive them, and the insurance, the liability, and everything else that goes along with it. So I really think that we, as public officials, and I think we really need to pay attention to what we're saying in these meetings and the promises that we're making to people. The one thing that we will say is it's going to cost a lot of money to do that kind of stuff.
And isn't that the story we hear over and over again?
Yeah. And the other thing is we are open for callers, 860-456-1400. So again, that's 860-456-1400. If you have a question for either myself or Chris, where our calls are open.
Excellent. So I'll give you a little bit of a preview to my upcoming episode here on Thursday, which is going to be right now at 3 to 4 o'clock on WILI 95.3 FM. Over the past I'll take that back. Over the past couple of episodes, and then also back at the end of last year, we spent a significant amount of time talking about our electric bills and some of the hidden taxes that we're finding, and also some of the unusual expenses that Pura approved. I talked about that just a couple of weeks ago on my show. And one of the things that just happened recently was that the final, what's called third program review of the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, which is a collaboration of a number of different New England and East Coast states, all getting together and basically providing a cap and trade program for energy producers and industries across these participating states. That is a market-based policy that really kind of sets a declining, legally binding limit or cap on the emissions that each one of these power plants or industries can emit each fiscal year. The way this is done is that quarterly, these allowances from each of these states are auctioned off to these energy producers or industries, and it's based on a metric ton of CO2 emissions that are produced. What has happened here with this, and we've talked about this in a number of different capacities, from the renewable portfolio standards that I've mentioned that are causing excessive increases in our electric bills over the past few legislative cycles. This is another one of those circumstances. And what happened last year was this third program review by the regulatory body of the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative set 3 changes in motion. This was first to tighten the regional carbon capacity, second to raise the minimum price for the emissions allowances that they're selling off at these auctions, and then to extend this program through 2037. The thing that I want people to understand is that just like under our public benefits charge, this is another form of a taxation. The reason that I say this is because these legislative changes that have been set in motion, the costs associated with this are absolutely not going to be absorbed by any utility company.
Right.
They are not going to say, hey, we're going to take this on. That's going to be passed right on to the ratepayer. Mm-hmm. It's going to be embedded in the wholesale price of electricity and passed on to these ratepayers under that supply portion of your bill. Right. You're not even going to be able to see it. The thing that really upset people 2 years ago in 2024, when I was out campaigning, and I spent months talking about the public benefits charge that suddenly appeared on our electric bill. That had been hidden and was finally itemized on our electric bill, and that's really what set people off. This one, you have no option. This is never going to appear anywhere because it is part of the supply and distribution rate, and it is going to be embedded in there, and you're never going to see this, and that number is what's going to be going up this year. If you remember in 2024, when we made a big stink about this, talking about Pura and how Pura only had 3 of the 5 members designated and all these concerns about the chairwoman, now those are coming true. There was a bunch of documents that were just released that showed that everything that we were concerned about with Pura in 2024 and 2025 were absolutely factual.
Right.
Okay? Now, in this case, when we have something that falls underneath this regional greenhouse gas initiative as a form of taxation where we have no option to even legislate it, control it, there's no accountability for this. These are the things that I'm going to talk about in detail on my show on Thursday. We're going to take a deep dive into this just like we do with some of these other issues on a weekly basis on Right Now. And I think it's important for people to understand that the greatest thing that we can do to decrease our electric bills right off the bat, and I'm talking about substantial decreases, like 25% decreases, is to put people into the legislature that are going to go after this issue and drive the cost of our energy down. Right now, Connecticut sits number 3 in the nation behind New Jersey and Hawaii, which is 2,000 miles off the mainland. We should not even be in that category.
Conversation, right.
Okay? It's because of a couple of factors. I'm going to talk about things that we can do as solutions on Thursday. But some of the things that I want people to think about is that first, 25% of your bill easily can be eliminated simply because of legislation. If we take that public benefits charge and everything associated with it off of the electrical bill and put it into the legislation, that's where that money needs to be decided upon. We have to have public debate about this. We have to have open discussion about how this money is being spent. When you see programs that are benefiting EV charging infrastructure for Fairfield County and nowhere else in Connecticut.
Right.
How are the rest of the ratepayers in Connecticut benefiting from this? The majority of the EV cars in Connecticut are in 7 Fairfield County towns.
Right.
We can all want to go towards green energy. I'm fully in support of that. But it has to be done equally and in a fair way, and it can't be through these hidden taxes that show up on our electric bills, where all of a sudden we are at the very highest electric paying consumers in the country. That's unacceptable.
Right. I mean, and we're not getting any benefit or any upgrade to our infrastructure, at the same time.
And this is something else that I'm going to dive into in a future episode of my show. Guess what Lamont just did? He agreed to bringing a company into Connecticut that specializes in getting database centers and AI into states where we do not have the electrical infrastructure for this.
Interesting.
You want your see your electric bill going up? Guess what's going to happen in the next few years?
It
is going to skyrocket. We're going to be number one. I asked a couple episodes ago. I said, "What's it going to take? Do we have to be the highest electrical ratepayers in the country? Is that what it's going to take for Connecticut to finally wise up and say we need to do something about this?"
I really don't understand. I hear people all the time, whether it's on social media or it's in person, talk about their public benefits charge outweighing their actual electrical their charge, their service charge, and yet they still vote in the same legislators time in and time, again and again and again. And it's not like they're even trying to make a change here.
One of the things that people will say is that part of this RGGI, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, is that some of this money is going to go back to the consumers in the way of programs that do benefit ratepayers. So, for instance, some of the things that the proceeds from RGGI go to are things, like I said, electrical vehicle rebates, heat pump system rebates. Mm-hmm. We can have a whole conversation on heat pump systems. I'm sure that you are well versed in that, Mike. We could do that in a future episode here.
Future one.
The EV charging infrastructure. Here's another thing which you're going to recognize from all we talked about in these public benefit charges. Part of the IGGI proceeds go to bill assistance programs for those hardship electrical bills that people couldn't pay. The other thing that's included in the RGGI proceeds are grants to politically favored nonprofits. Should that be part of our electric bill? I'm not good with that.
No, I'm not either.
There are other things that are good. There are programs that help with home weatherization to make sure that your home is energy efficient throughout the winter. There's things for appliance rebates to buy energy efficient appliances.
Right.
Okay? And there are solar incentives all mixed in through all these proceeds. But the point is we need to make these things very clear. We need to make them have transparency and accountability in these programs, and we can't have taxes that are passed on from the legislative decisions through the electrical companies onto ratepayers in another form of a taxation for us. We have too many taxes in Connecticut. We have to look at affordability here, and this is one of the things that we need to do to ensure that. The last thing that I want to add before we get to our breaks, we're coming down to the bottom of the hour here, and our commercial break here, is that one of the significant things that happened right in December of 2025 was that Pennsylvania and the Pennsylvania legislature was going through litigation, and this is actually 2 years worth of litigation. Pennsylvania court system did recognize that Pennsylvania ratepayers belonging to this regional greenhouse gas initiative was an improper form of taxation. They appealed it. This went to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, and finally the ruling came out in December of 2025 that said that this was an unconstitutional form of taxation, and Pennsylvania has now in 2026 removed itself from that regional greenhouse gas initiative. The idea here and the unconstitutionality of this is that their governor at the time, prior to Shapiro, I think it was Wolf his name was, used an executive order to initiate this because it was a taxation that was not approved by the legislature, and through executive order, they were able to remove this and remove themselves from that regional greenhouse gas initiative. We can all want to reduce carbon dioxide emissions. I've told on my show, and I think I've mentioned on here, in addition from everything else that I've done in my life, I'm a master gardener. I have a hobby farm at my house. I very much understand plant pathology and also plant development, and we can have a whole discussion on increased carbon dioxide emissions. My concern with this regional greenhouse gas initiative is that we have entered into this with, it was initially 11 states, now down to 10 states after Pennsylvania removed. How do we equitably divide up this money? Do we divide it up based on each business that's in each one of these states or power plants? Or do we look at other weather and environmental issues and say, hey, some of the biggest contributors to increased CO2 emissions in New England are probably not from our states.
Right.
They're probably from Pennsylvania and New York and New Jersey and Maryland and Delaware, because that's how those prevailing winds are going to be moving anything.
Right.
So how do we divide this up? Or do we simply have to go back to the fact that we need to look at this on a state-by-state basis? So there's a lot of factors that I think really were not taken into consideration when these regional greenhouse gas initiatives started, and really it's something that we need to look at in the future as to whether this is an equitable use of our money, or can we simply put this into better programs that really do it? The one thing that I will say about the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative is that it really did cause energy producers to look at things like older coal facilities and shut them down. And I think that is what we can absolutely attribute the greatest results from the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative to, is the closing of these older, outdated coal facilities, which were very dirty and definitely had better options for them. But now that we've closed those, are we really going to see a significant change in the future? Or is this something we're simply going to be dumping billions of dollars into over the next 5 to 10 years with minimal improvements over what we're looking for as goals?
Right. And I think that's what a lot of people are concerned about. And we do have other avenues for power, United Nuclear and, different nuclear technologies that are coming aroed.
Certainly.
So there's a lot of things we need to look at. But looks like we're getting ready to head out onto a break here. WILI 1400 AM, 95.3 FM. Welcome back to Unfiltered with Mike DeZonia and Chris Reddy here on WILI 1400 AM and 95.3 FM.
So I just want to remind everybody that if they ever want to see any of the episodes of either Unfiltered with Mike DeSonier or Right Now with Chris Reddy and our prior episodes with Mike DeSoniers and Curtis Ayler, you can go to not only WILI.com and look for the podcast. Scroll all the way down. You'll find both of our shows on there available in podcast format. You can also go to YouTube and you can search Right Now or Unfiltered. And these shows are recorded in studio as we're providing them to you. You can listen anytime. And also, we have the phone lines open. If you want to provide the phone number one more time for us, Mike, we'll see if we get any callers for our second segment here.
All right, it's 860-456-1400.
What we've been talking about before the break here was first the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative that Connecticut has entered in with also 9 other states. And one of the things that I want to kind of leave people with before I talk about it on Thursday with this is that there really is now at this point no option for us as ratepayers, because this is something that is not regulated by our legislature at this point. What's left is simply the Legislative Regulation Review Committee, which is really just looking at procedural issues to make sure that these regulations comply with not only existing law, but for instance, in this case, DEEP agency authority. So really it is just kind of a rubber stamp that's left, and within the next few months, our electrical rates will be going up. As ratepayers, both private residential and commercial ratepayers, our rates are going to be going up in the next few months.
And when you say that the residential and the commercial, people have to understand that when the commercial rates go up, now your costs of your goods are going up, because the product that they provide is going to become more expensive due to their overhead. So this is going to hit the ratepayers, the public, twice. It's going to hit you in your home bills, and it's also going to hit you with your purchases and your services.
So now, Mike, you bring up something that really kind of struck me, because I just had a conversation within the past couple of days about this. Across the country, which states do you think, red or blue, boast the highest rate of sales taxes?
I would say the blue states are definitely the highest.
So now what has happened since the Biden administration was in office and all of our costs went up significantly? Have you taken a look at the state of Connecticut's sales tax revenue prior to COVID and since?
I have not.
Skyrocketing. Do you think there's any relationship to policies and the sales tax revenue that is generated by these states that benefit from inflation? When the cost of everything goes up and you're paying 6.35% on everything you purchase.
Right. And it definitely It's you hate to say it, but it's a form of revenue for the government. For it's
And isn't that what the Connecticut state government is all about? Is taxing and spending and taxing and spending.
it is. It's crazy, and you have. I just found out today. I went down and I got a letter in the mail of an assessment, and I called up and I said, "Hey, why'd this go up so much?" And they said, "Well, you missed your filing date, so there's a 25% penalty." So they add 25% to your assessment of the previous year because you went over by a day on your filing. So it's like, wow, 25%. And they're not messing around. And there's no appeal process to this.
Of course not. Why would there be?
It is what it is. Yeah. That's the law. That's what it is.
All right. Good old Connecticut.
We
got to do something here.
We are in a tax state, yeah.
So now we have to kind of talk about how we're going to solve some of these issues that you and I have been discussing here. And this is how I'm going to segue into our next little bit here, because we're coming up to a very important time in the election cycle, since Connecticut, as a midterm election state, votes in their state representatives and state senators every 2 years. This midterm election, we have a large midterm election in this state with all of our representatives being up for office. We're about a month and a half away from our RTCs in the areas selecting delegates to go to the conventions. Right. I want to kind of encourage people that if you have any interest in local politics, now is a great time to get involved. You can look online, find out when your local Republican town committee, or any other town committee for that matter, if you are interested, holds their meetings, and you can show up. And with the two majority parties, Democrat and Republican, each town, their Republican town committees are allowed to select delegates to send to state conventions to select who their representatives will be for not only state representative, state senator, but also federal, congressional, and federal senatorial seats. So this is really a very important time of the year, even though elections don't come up until November, for people that want to become involved, to get active, to really be able to get in at the beginning of when election campaigning season starts. And you're going to get to see this from the very beginning, and you're going to be able to be involved from what begins with these state conventions. There's going to be 4 of them coming up in May, but we do our delegate selections that are going to be starting in March. So this is a good time where if you do have any interest, I know that in the 29th district here, we have some very good, very dedicated, and very involved RTCs, but we're always looking for more people to become involved. And if you're listening to this show or either of our shows, my show on Thursdays, my show on Mondays from 3 to 4 here that we're on right now, we want people to get involved, especially younger people that are only first starting to recognize the implications of your obligation to vote, your constitutional right to vote, and participating in our election process. I know this is something that a lot of people were very encouraged about doing. We saw this in the 2024 election when 25% of the voters in Mansfield turned out as same-day registrants, either during early voting or during the election day registration period. So clearly there is motivation out there for people to get involved, and we want to encourage that. We want everybody to, because we have seen a trend for years where voter participation in Connecticut is relatively low. So if these are issues that do concern you, make sure that you are getting involved. The best way to do that is to check out what's going on with your town's Republican town committee, if you are a conservative, but also, it gives you an opportunity to meet who it is that is involved in elections, because the entire role of a Republican town committee or any town committee that's politically active is to identify and to promote and elect people in that party. It takes people who are engaged. It takes people who are interested, and this is the best way for you to get involved in something that you're interested in. I know that you come from a family that has been involved in doing this for years, Mike.
Right. And yes, so I happen to be the chairman of the Wyndham Republican Town Committee. And we have openings for people, and a lot of people think that they don't get involved because they don't want to go to a million meetings, they don't want to do this, they don't want to do, there are all different things in a town committee that need to be done. There's people that you can just do research, you can just be there to support, you can just be there for ideas. There's a multitude of things that you can do. And young people really do have this vision that maybe we're stuck in. We see a certain way. And I know it happened to me in this last election cycle where, there were things that I saw that one way and I never saw it differently. And we had Haley ran for mayor here. And, she brought up some ideas that, all these people in the room never thought of. And ran with it. And, this was our first time ever doing anything, social media wise or anything like that, And I think we had a really good turnout, and we interacted with a lot of people. And there are still people interacting with her on social media. And it's the young people. You have to remember, you may not be interested right now in politics. You may be 19, you may be 18, you may be 20, 21. But at some point, you're going to want to buy a home, and you're going to be paying taxes. You already are, but you just don't realize how much taxes you're paying now. And you're going to want to have a choice in who makes these decisions for you and who's voting and pushing for different things in Hartford.
It also pays for you just to be simply informed. And that's what a lot of the town committees can provide you with also, is a lot of the insight into what the issues are locally and also regionally, because we work collaboratively across the senatorial district among our RTCs to make sure that we stay informed about this. So it's a good spot to also get information locally about politics. The other thing that I want to kind of encourage people to also become involved in is because at some point in your life, something's going to happen where you're going to rely on your local government. And if you've kind of ignored voting and put off going to all the referendum votes and all the small votes, like everybody shows up for the big votes.
Right.
But the really small votes and staying informed and participating all the time is so important, because at some point you're going to rely on that local government to correct a problem that you have.
Right.
And you want to make sure that the people that are there are the ones that you trust to make a good decision for you, but then also to be able to resolve your issues. And if you can't trust that in these people, and it's because you didn't participate and let someone else make that decision for you, you really can't complain. If your taxes go up and you didn't vote to say, no, I've had enough of this, please don't be complaining. Get out and vote.
I mean,
get out there and make your voice heard.
These are the elections that really, really matter,
Absolutely.
in my opinion. It's not, the president, I'm not saying, so I know I'll take some flack for this. Your presidential and your federal elections, all that, they're important, but it's not like your local stuff. At a town meeting a few weeks ago, they took a vote, and a vote passed by one vote. Okay, I must have read 100 complaints on social media, people who didn't want something to happen or they wanted it to happen, but yet 13 people showed up to vote, and a vote passed by one. So, if a quarter of these people showed up, your races in town, local races, sometimes are there's a difference of, there was recounts of 4 votes, 6 votes. These elections really do matter. Your vote matters. And, your opinion matters, and so that's what we need, people to get out and vote. Whether or not you're a Republican, you're a Democrat, whatever you are, get out, vote, become informed, and then you'll see positive change happening with the town.
I know that people in Eastern Connecticut are interested. I spent all of 2024, every single day of my campaign, 7 days a week, knocking on doors and talking to people. I know they're interested in these things.
You were crazy. I mean, I just, there were so many people that I would hear from that say, "Hey, have you met Chris Reddy yet?" And I was like, "Yeah, how did you?" Well, he was at my house. He was here. He was there. And it was like everywhere I looked, you were everywhere. So
grassroots campaigning is absolutely it. I will tell anybody till the day that I die that grassroots campaigning, there's no substitute for standing at someone's front door and talking to them about the issues.
Right.
Nothing about it. I think that people are interested enough, and what I really want to see in this area of Eastern Connecticut is some of the highest voter turnout in the state. There are small pockets. You look at some small areas in Northwest Connecticut, and I mentioned this back around Election Day, where they had fantastic voter turnout. I want to see the same thing around here. We need to have a true representation of how people are voting in this district. I saw that in 2024. I think the numbers can be better, and I want to see people getting out to vote in 2026.
Yes.
It's that important. We are now at an absolute tipping point with affordability in Connecticut. We can't see electrical bills go any higher. We can't see another 20% property tax increase in the town of Wyndham or the town of Coventry or the town of Chaplin. This is not sustainable. You had it happen last year. You're going to have it happen again this year. There's no end in sight.
No,
you are going to drive people out of this state so fast.
Right, and I really fear that if something doesn't change this time, that we're going to get to the point where I'm not going to say change can never happen, but change is going to be so much more difficult to make happen because you're just embedding yourself into this, and you really have to understand. People have to understand this is not a Republican, a Democrat thing. This is a total. Go out, really look at what you're paying for, and then look at your representative. If you feel your representative has represented your best interests in Hartford, by all means, vote for them again. But if you feel that you've been misrepresented, then it's time to make a change.
And I'll add one thing to that, and this is something. I believe it was on my show in October that I had a guest on, and he mentioned this. This is one of my favorite graphics from the Yankee Institute. And this is it's a graph that shows the Connecticut population versus state appropriated spending. We know that for the past 30 plus years, Connecticut has had a virtually flat population of 3.6 million people. That's it. And in fact, in 2025, that number went down. More people were moving out than moving in. Okay. 30 years of a flat population, yet state appropriated spending is up almost 300%.
Wow.
This is like looking at a flat field and a ski slope superimposed over each other when you look at this graph.
Wow.
You can't increase spending 300% over 3 decades with the same number of people and not expect people to be upset.
Exactly. And that's what we have to look at now. We have to come together as a community. We have to work on, getting things changed because it's become you can't afford to live here. And I really feel bad for those. I'm in a unique situation where myself I can work a little extra. I can take a few extra jobs. But a lot of people, you work a 8 to 5, 9 to 5 job or whatever you work, or 2 jobs, 3 jobs. Some people are working. The hours just aren't there, and they just can't make it. And we're worried about what's going to happen with our kids and schools, but we're totally not looking at what we're charging families to live here in Connecticut.
But you just have to look at some of the legislature that's coming out right now, because we have subsidized childcare now by the state of Connecticut. So instead of making childcare less expensive, we're now going to subsidize it, charge taxpayers more, and make everyone have to work more to pay for everyone else.
Everyone else, yep.
It's things like that we need to really look at, and it's also the size of the Connecticut government. When one of the things that the Yankee Institute also brought out was that Connecticut has 360 sources of revenue. These are all the programs, from taxes to all the licensing fees for all of our professionals and everything else. 360 sources of income. 160 of them lose money every single year. They can't even justify their own existence.
Right.
Because they don't bring in enough revenue through their licensing or whatever else it is to even justify them being there, but we continue to have them on the books.
Yep.
Why are we doing this, Connecticut? We are making this place more unaffordable. Why are we regulating and mandating and pushing off onto local property taxes all these expenses that really need to be something that we get to publicly debate and argue in the legislature? This is where it all starts. To make Connecticut affordable, the first thing you need to do is vote everybody who's made Connecticut unaffordable out. And put people in there who are going to make Connecticut more affordable right from day one.
We do. We need to wipe the slate clean and just go right through and repair this. You know, if you make everyone dependent, and that's almost what the government wants to do right now, is make you dependent on them.
In some sort of a program. Like, they're going to find some way that you...
Then they have total control over you. I mean, you look at everything from... A big one is healthcare. A lot of people right now are, upset with the healthcare. Our hospitals that we're not taxing to be here, they don't provide the services that they should be providing. You try to get a doctor now. I was telling you earlier.
Yeah.
The next time I can see a doctor is sometime in April. And that's if that doctor is still employed by the healthcare.
But you've already been part of that practice and already had tests done by them.
Right, and I've already had...
you're still waiting that long.
I've already had the test done. I've already had, everything done that needs to be done. But now I'm being told, okay, well, your doctor's left the system, and so there's no other till April. So... You
try and get a new appointment, you're waiting 9-10 months.
Right, you are. You're waiting, and it's and we're leaving off this preventive stuff that we should really be looking at, and we're just taxing the people for services that we're really not getting.
Yeah, and at some point, something's got to give. I mean,
something does,
and people really need to speak up by using their vote.
Their votes, right.
To say enough's enough. We need to do something to make this a state where not only people can live but also thrive. Yep. You have to give them the opportunity where you are not burdened everywhere you turn around by some sort of a taxation. Right. And that's what we have right now. We're just suffering under bad legislation.
Exactly. And at some point, it's got to give. I look at our senator now, and what is she doing? And I can't. Nobody can answer that because I can't see anything that she's done. I can't see anything she's proposed, but she's there. In spirit, she's there.
She did make sure that there was voting at college campuses.
She did, and she fought really hard for that, and that's something you say about. And when we talked about this last week at our 2 weeks ago at our council meeting, these extra voting locations now that our state rep pushed for, the state senator pushed and pushed for, but one thing they didn't push for was the financial backing of the state once they implemented that. So that now became a bill of the taxpayers.
Yep.
And now that we've realized that it wasn't worth it, especially in Wyndham, where no college students voted at
I know.
the location. Okay, our local politicians of a certain party voted at that location, but
For a specific reason.
for a specific reason to show that, hey, this is great. You know, we had the state rep tell me, oh, it was more convenient. How is it more convenient? Well, you've got to drive through and you've got to go park in Mansfield and walk into Wyndham to vote. You know, it was ridiculous. We had to take and use a college's library area. The college didn't want us there. And it showed because nobody voted. You know,
Who picked up the tab for having a voting center for college students?
the taxpayers of Wyndham picked it up, or the taxpayers of Mansfield in that situation.
Yes.
So, and now I said, well, why don't we just change this now that we know it didn't work? Well, the Secretary of State, what I was told by Susan Johnson was the Secretary of State wants to wait and see what happens this time and make sure, you know, well, the last time when I talked to the Secretary of State, she said, well, it wasn't my decision. It was the legislators. So they've got to make the decision to change it. So now we're pushing it all off onto Stephanie Thomas and saying, well, you know, it was her deal.
That's the way it goes. Plausible deniability.
Yeah, it's like, you know, so somebody's got to take the credit for this action. It was wrong. You know, let's go back to doing things the way they used to be. Hey, you know what? If you want early voting, I get it. But multiple locations in an area because you have a college, it's just not right to put that on.
I agree.
That mandate on.
So we have something significant that is on a federal level that I'm just going to mention here. And I was going to bring this up on my show on Thursday. The SAVE Act. Right? This is the new Voter Election Laws Act. What they're pushing for is now all the states to comply with the federal mandates that you have to show proper identification. You have to clean up the ballot rolls, make sure there are not any questionable people on those rolls, and you have to make sure that everyone who's voting is in fact a U.S. citizen.
Right.
What I want to know is, can we ask these legislators in Connecticut to specifically tell us why they would oppose that?
That's a really good question and that's something I don't care, Republican, Democrat, bottom line, Green Party, whatever, working families. Why would you oppose this? I mean, there's no downside to this. You're making sure that you're eligible to vote.
Yeah. And the reason I bring this up is because of what I know about what happened up at Mansfield. UConn students were allowed to register to vote, same-day registrations, showing identification on their phone that was a portal to their UConn student identification.
Right.
All that showed was a common address of like one university way or whatever.
Right.
That is not acceptable for voter eligibility for voter rolls. You don't have a common address. You have a specific address on a campus.
Sure.
And anyone who uses that type of an identification to register to vote, that should be discounted. You can't do that. And we know that because there are videos out there that have UConn students saying that they did not live on campus but voted at that campus in 2024 for convenience, that they were commuters that lived 30 minutes away.
Right. You know, you had that, and then there were some other issues that did happen. You know, in Wyndham, when people registered to vote, their registration went through before they voted. What happened in the UConn campus was
The opposite.
they filled out their registration form and were given a ballot.
Yep.
Them registration forms were not put into the computer, and I know this for a fact because I was there. They were still adding registrations into the computer after the election had happened.
26 hours after.
Right, and you know, that's unacceptable. And whether or not there was foul play or not, that's unacceptable. That should never have happened. And it's just it wouldn't have happened had people thought the roles were going the other way. So it's something that we really need to think about. And when you think about ID, you know, I hear people, oh, you can't do that. You can't. Well, try getting on a plane. Try doing anything without an ID right now. You can't even go in and buy a cigarette lighter without an ID. But you can vote without an ID. It doesn't make any sense.
And that's one of the things I've always said is India can provide voter IDs for 4 billion people. We can surely do it here.
Right.
So we're getting to the top of the hour here. Mike, it's been a pleasure being on Unfiltered with you again. Thank you very much for having me. I'm welcome to come. I'm happy to come back anytime and help you out here on your show.
Thanks. Well, hopefully next week goes a little better than today because I really did need the help today. But I thank everybody for coming on and tuning in to WILI 1400 AM and 95.3 FM.